The Civil War was a very important part of American history. However, prior to that, northern and southern states had reached a unique agreement that delayed the war for several years. This agreement was called the Compromise of 1850. The Compromise of 1850, presented by Jessica Sargent. It all started after the Mexican-American War, when the United States gained large amounts of land in the West. California asked for the right to join the Union as a free state in 1849. However, that change would upset the balance of power between the southern slave states and the northern free states that had been managed since the Missouri Compromise of 1820. Prior to California, there was an equal number of slave states to free states. Adding California to the Union would alter this balance and make it appear as though the national government was tilting in favor of free states rather than slave states. Henry Clay, a Republican senator from Kentucky, began to work on a compromise that he hoped would make senators vote in the best interest of the Union. For the next 7 months, the Senate debated Clay's solution. Congress was confronted with the issue of territorial expansion. Part of the compromise also tried to satisfy differences between the North and the South about the Fugitive Slave Act. This began to tear away at peace between the two sides. Clay was a widely loved politician who was the Secretary of State under President John Quincy Adams. He was also the Speaker for the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, despite all of his popularity, he lost the presidential election 5 times in a row. Clay was the leader of the Whig Party, which opposed the Democrats. Creating the Whig Party created the second party system. Though this party disappeared after his death, it did form what we now know as the Republican Party. Clay was the peacemaker and negotiator. He served in Congress for much of his life. He was constantly trying to settle disputes with Congress members. Clay was a strong nationalist, dedicated to keeping his country together and creating economic development. He wants the U.S. to prosper and avoid fighting over slavery. Clay may have believed that the war with Britain was vital to the United States, but other than that, he was a fairly peaceful guy. He was constantly creating compromises. He created the Missouri Compromise of 1820, the Tariff Compromise of 1833, and the Compromise of 1850. When making all these compromises, one of his main goals was to avoid a civil war. Obviously, it didn't work. We still had a civil war, but it was postponed. In the end, his vision of America was fulfilled. In the Missouri Compromise, Missouri wanted to become a slave state in 1819, but it would offset the balance between the free states and slave states. The simple solution to this was adding Maine as a free state. It settled the dispute over slavery and control of the country. It held off the war for the next 30 years. By the year of 1850, sectional disputes that focused on slavery were tugging at the bonds of the Union between the North and the South. As Congress started to examine whether Western lands gained after the Mexican-American War would permit slavery, tensions grew even more. Henry Clay created the Compromise of 1850 as one bill to fix everything. He was supported by his partners Daniel Webster and John Calhoun. The compromise was debated for 7 months. Stephen Douglas, a Democratic senator from Illinois, suggested that they make it into 5 separate bills. As the name suggests, the bills were a compromise between the northern free states and the southern slave states over slavery and overall control over the country. Its objective was to keep the country together and avoid the war. The bills failed to pass as Zachary Taylor, President of the United States, strongly opposed them. His sudden death in July of 1850 from food poisoning paved the path of the compromise through Congress. Vice President Millard Fillmore became the new president and helped to approve bills. He strongly agreed with the bills because they would help keep the country out of war while he was the president. The final version of the compromise included 5 bills, which were approved by senators in September of 1850. The first bill admitted California as a free state. This addition helped the North because it gave them more senators. More senators meant more power. The second bill created Utah and New Mexico from part of the Western territories. The issue of slavery would be determined by the people in each state. That would benefit the South if the people voted for slavery. The third bill settled a boundary dispute between Texas and New Mexico. Texas lost land, but in return was given $10 million to settle the state debt. The fourth bill put an end to slave trade in Washington, D.C. That being said, it did not end slavery. The fifth bill made it easier for the Southerners to recover fugitive slaves in the northern states. The Compromise of 1850 allowed the United States to create more states from the new Western territories. This area was rich in gold and other natural resources that would create wealth and enrich the country as a whole. The Compromise of 1850 appeared to solve the conflict between the North and the South. Still, civil war broke out a mere 11 years after the compromise was passed. In conclusion, the Compromise of 1850 was an excellent and very helpful settlement to the dispute over slavery. Though it didn't last, it brought our nation together. It helped prevent the Civil War for a few years. This compromise may not be widely known, but it is still a very important part of history.